Major funding for Carolina Business Review is provided by Grant Thornton, an international accounting, tax, and business advisory organization dedicated to serving middle-market companies. Grant Thornton, a passion for the business of accounting. Novant Health, including Presbyterian in Charlotte and Forsyth in Winston-Salem, are affiliate heart hospitals of the Cleveland Clinic, consistently ranked #1 in the nation for heart care. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, proudly serving South Carolinians since 1946. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Well, here we are, another new Apple product, March Madness, longer days, warmer weather, improving government tax receipts slightly, and just all around better business. Welcome again to the most widely watched dialogue on Carolina business and public policy. I'm Chris William, and this string of good economic news truly does seem to be sustaining. Even the equity markets are flirting with record highs again. Are we back? Is this recovery different? And with state tax revenue heading higher, and it is, what about a revival in our social responsibility? We start the discussion in just a moment, and later on, Harris DeLoach of Sunoco.
Major funding also by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation in Charlotte enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. This edition of Carolina Business Review was recorded March 16, 2012. On this week's program, John Silvia of Wells Fargo, Debra Lyons of ACT Incorporated, and special guest Harris DeLoach, Chairman of the Board and CEO of Sunoco Products Company. Now, Chris William.
Hello, welcome to our program, and almost happy spring. I think it's fair to say that with 80-degree weather. John, welcome back. Debra, good to have you here. John, you know, the word jobs surely comes up a lot. I mean, you're in the national media talking about it. You're in the local media talking about it. You're nice enough to come on a program like this. Give us a sense of where we are in jobs right now. Everyone talks about jobs, unemployment numbers, employment numbers, but where are we? What's going on?
Well, Chris, you and I have talked about this before, even on this program. There's sort of two tracks. There are the jobs that go along with the business cycle, the economy expanding over time. And we're picking up jobs in a broad area of opportunities when we look at manufacturing jobs, value-added manufacturing jobs improving, professional business services, finance, investment, IT. All of that's improving. And so that goes with the business cycle. But there's another track that's more of an issue here, I think, in American society, is the gap between what companies need and the skills that people bring to the labor force. And what we see, especially in this 21st century, Chris, is a need for even more advanced manufacturing skills for a manufacturing worker or in the service sector that is not being met by the people coming to the application office.
Okay, and before we drill it down
Sure.
into that, Debra, we're going to bring you in on that in just a second.
Sure.
But let me get back to this jobs number for a second.
Sure.
In the Carolinas, North and South Carolina, the unemployment rate has been dropping.
That's
nationally,
right.
Certainly. But we're still, John, and the published rate is around 9% or so. But I got to think that the effective rate, those that really are without jobs, is much higher than that still.
Well, yes, because the argument is that there are underemployed people working part-time would like to work full-time. There are a lot of workers who had simply dropped out of the labor force, what we call discouraged workers. So that effective unemployment rate is higher than the published numbers. And again, it's particularly true in South and North Carolina because we come from a manufacturing background, particularly in furniture and textiles, a lot of small businesses,
Right,
all of which
right.
have been hurt by this recession. And into the recovery, they're just not picking up like they traditionally would.
Debra, the unique phenomenon that John just referred to about this issue that while unemployment, there are a lot of laborers, a lot of inventory for workers, let's put it that way, but yet companies still poach workers from each other because of the qualifications. Talk about a little bit about this phenomenon and why this is something to be concerned about or not.
Sure. It is something to be concerned about. You know, the job market is coming back, the economy is coming back, but it's a different economy. You know, it's one that's requiring a higher skilled worker. The jobs of the lower skilled worker, we've been seeing those disappear, and really, frankly, in this last recession, we saw them disappearing in large numbers. So this is really a new workforce requiring a higher skilled level. And that is really what the difference is. And how do you quickly transform the workforce that exists today, particularly those that are unemployed? And how do we get them to where they need to be? And what it is it's all about the training. People have to be at a certain critical thinking level, work readiness foundation level to be trained. And that's really the cusp of where the skills gap is, particularly when you get into the manufacturing jobs that are requiring those higher, more sophisticated skill levels. People have to be ready to be trained for those jobs.
Okay, well, let me stop you right there, because about, I know this is going to be just vague at best, but about how many people out there that are unemployed, what percentage of those that are in the unemployment role, how many of those actually are struggling with wanting to be trained? Or I guess the question is, don't you have to have a will to want to be trained?
Well, you do have to. I think most people want to be trained. I think the biggest will they have is they want a job. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. It's actually one of the things that we as a company, ACT, are really working on, is the ability to help create thought leadership around a holistic strategy in workforce development. For instance, traditionally what we see is people lose their job, and we want them to go to school for 1 or 2 years and get trained in something new and go to work. But if you actually look at the data, 87% of the folks that are unemployed don't want to go back to school. What they want to do is get a job, and they want to be trained on the job. They want to know that whatever training they get, they have employment.
Is that realistic or no? And John?
No, go ahead.
So what you're looking at, and when I'm using the term 87%, it was based on some work I had done with the unemployed in one of my previous jobs. I started looking at this data. So if you're looking for a strategy of finding employment, a lot of times what companies have is they're looking for whatever experience you're bringing in the door, but they're also looking for the basic critical thinking skills you're bringing, because most companies are going to be investing in you to train you. The largest percent of funding in this country that goes to training actually goes into the current workforce, people who have a job.
But part of the issue goes back to, like you said, the attitude. The challenge is, even if you go to college, there's no guarantee for a job after that. And I think the challenge for a lot of workers is to realize that when they engage in training, there's no guarantee for a job after that either. And so I think a lot of workers, as you said, are trying to get a job that entails some training, so they're sort of like guaranteed, okay, now the training really matters. But the reality in labor force development is you just cannot guarantee the job after the training.
Yeah, I guess one of the questions is, how, in any unemployment number, anybody without a job, their rate of unemployment is 100%.
Yes.
So it's hard not to be demoralized. Is this demoralizing, discouraging attitude, is it worse now than it has been in other recoveries?
I would say the 1982 period was the one where there was a major restructuring going on in the Rust Belt in the United States. And this is probably much like that period, where there's a realization that the job is simply not going to come back to the same location, to the same people. And that leads to that kind of discouragement.
Debra, do you get the sense that people are understanding this, that the way things were, it really is not going to be that way when it comes to training and jobs?
I think that people struggle because we don't really have a clear line of sight. We don't really have a workforce development system that works for people.
Is that about public policy, or is that about people just not being willing to do what it takes?
No, I actually think people really are willing to do what it takes. I think they don't know what they need to do to be successful, and that's a lot of what ACT is leading right now. We were talking earlier about, the work keys assessments and the National Career Readiness Certificate. The ability for an individual to understand what it means to be a skilled worker is hugely important for them. But so is graduating from high school, going to college, getting those training, all of those things. You're building a toolbox. But fundamentally, if a person is not at the level to be trained, you can put them in the training, and it's challenging for them to be successful. It's challenging for companies to be productive when they don't hire the people at the right levels for the training. And that's a lot of what we're looking at doing, is providing a clear line of sight for people. This is really about individuals knowing what it means to be a skilled worker, matching it to what companies need in a skilled worker, and then integrating it into career pathways.
Okay. You know, we're going to have to cut it off there, but
Sure.
in about 10 seconds, would you say that it's, yeah, you laugh because you know sometimes we can't do that here. Debra, would you say that it is getting easier, that this is catching on, that programs, not just like ACT, and I don't mean this to be a commercial or a promotion for ACT, but is this going in the right direction for states like South Carolina?
It really is. And what we're seeing is states have actually been knocking on the door of ACT and asking us to build some infrastructure around putting this clear line of sight in for people.
Okay. All right. Really, this is the last word. Bank stress tests, is this a good thing?
Oh, it's a great thing for the economy.
Okay. All right. You did it. Wow, in less than 10 seconds. Next week on this program should be pretty interesting. We talk about stress testing the banks. Well, certainly state governments have been stress tested these last few short years, or long years it might seem. Next week on this program, she is the Chief Financial Officer for the state of North Carolina, better known as the State Treasurer. The Honorable Janet Cowell will be here. And then the 2 weeks following that, we are going to have a special program with a special focus called The Public Conscience. Many of the issues that we talk about in this program have a basis in character, imagine that, as well as a public conscience. What needs to be driving business and what needs to be driving our public policy dialogue? We will talk about that in a special 2-week program. You would expect that South Carolina's now largest publicly traded company would have an impact on the community around it, as well it does. In the case of Sunoco, that impact has been intentional and strategic to the environment and to education, maybe even more so than you might expect. Joining us now is Sunoco Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Harris DeLoach. Mr. Chairman, welcome back. Good
Glad to be back, Chris. Good to be with you always.
Thank you, Harris. Harris, Sunoco is one of the largest recyclers of certainly paper in this nation. So I know you have a bit of a corporate initiative here to do something right with those assets, but I guess from the altruistic standpoint, why would a company like Sunoco, Harris, give us the motivation on why do the right thing when it comes down the environment if it doesn't really impact your bottom line?
Well, Chris, I think you have to look at Sunoco. I mean, Sunoco is not into recycling in recent years. We've been recycling for 60 or 70 years. And we got into recycling, making recycled paperboard out of recycled paper for our converted products from a cost perspective. I mean, it was much cheaper to make it out of recycled paper than it was virgin pulp. So we got into it from a cost perspective before it was probably in vogue to recycle. But clearly in the last 20 years, it's the right thing to do from the environmental standpoint. So we continue to grow our recycling business around the world, A, for the bottom line of the company, B, it's the right thing to do from an environmental perspective. So it's a balancing of both.
So here you are well into this and feeling probably pretty good about recycling in the environment. How do you use that bully pulpit, if you will, to influence public policy around this and reach out to some of your compatriots, not necessarily in packaging, but maybe in South Carolina, maybe others that you know? How do you encourage them to take this environmental issue?
Well, most of our recycling takes place in the Southeast, and that's by design. I mean, we have large paper mills in the Southeast, but more than that, the recycling rate in the South is about 22% of what is recycled or goes to the landfill, or is recycled out of the landfill, versus about 33% nationwide. So there's a nice gap in the Southeast to encourage recycling. And when we talk to the legislators and the regulatory bodies, we point that out, that we're not recycling, particularly in the South, to the extent that other parts of the country are, and there are opportunities there. And recycling is a nice business. We have about 15,000 employees in South Carolina that engage in some form or another in the recycling business. If we were to bump that to the national average, we would probably double that recycling, the number of employees. So obviously it helps the job situation in the South, in South Carolina, but also helps us from a business standpoint as well.
John?
Harris, great to see you again.
Good to see you.
And So sustainability, I mean, it's a commonly thrown around word. What does it mean to a manufacturing firm, a packaging firm, when we use the word sustainability, and how do you judge that?
Well, when I think about sustainability, I think about a broad form of sustainability. I'm talking about, obviously, environmental sustainability. I'm talking about social responsibility. And I'm also talking about sustainability of my shareholders, that they have a sustainable profit-generating company over a period of time. When I look at it from a manufacturing standpoint, we're looking at it that the material that we're bringing in to our manufacturing process, in this case we're talking about recycled paper, but it could be recycled plastics, it could be other things, that they are environmentally friendly to make into the products. And then we look at the process that we're using to manufacture the converted products, be it plastic, be it metal, be it whatever it may be, that we're using additives that are environmentally friendly, BPA-free adhesives, and those types. But we're also working with our customers to develop more environmentally friendly packaging. I happened to see a news release that Kraft put out this week about their new Planters peanut bottle, that we're fortunate enough to supply them in a new plastic. And they were talking in terms of it being, I think, 86% less weight than the product that they were using before. It's BPA free. I happen to remember that they see a 25% reduction in trucks necessary to carry that product to the grocery store because it's lighter weight. So we're working the entire supply chain from the products that we're bringing into our manufacturing facility, our processes in the plant, as well as the output working with our customers.
Great.
Because the consumer is very conscious today of sustainability.
That's right.
And it is, I think, a competitive advantage for Sunoco that we do have this approach.
Yeah, it's a buzzword out there, but it's nice for you to clarify.
It is indeed.
Debra?
Yeah, what an impressive company. I was reading
Thank you very
about it.
much.
Just impressive. I think if I have a question to ask you, it's how have you seen the worker skills, for your company? 19,000 people, wow, very large employer. How have you seen that change over the last, 5 to 10 years? And the skills needed in your company for your company to continue to be productive?
Well, I would have to say, if someone that was walked in our plant 10 years ago and hadn't been in it in 10 years, they probably wouldn't have recognized it because the technology has changed, the equipment's changed, and the skills of our workforce has had to change during that period of time. And obviously, we have our own training that we do for our employees. But I heard you talking earlier about jobs, and unfortunately, there are people that have been affected in this downturn in the economy that don't have the necessary skills to work in my manufacturing facilities. And they have to go get those skills to come back to be able to get gainful employment in our plants, wherever we are around the world.
So Harris, when they come in and they apply for a job and they're turned away because they don't have a qualification, do you think that's a surprise to them? That
Chris, I don't know that. Actually, I'm going to use South Carolina as an example because that's obviously our largest facility. We work with the South Carolina Technical Education Group, and they actually screen employees. So they send us only those employees that are qualified. I'm certain there are numbers that go through that process to begin with and take those courses that we never see.
And let me follow up something that John said, talk about the sustainability. When we all walk into stores and we buy products, some of the packaging is onerous. It's hard to open. You look at it and you think,
There's
wow,
a lot of it.
There's a lot of it. So I guess who drives that? Do you drive that?
Well, you obviously hadn't seen Sunoco packaging.
Yeah, well, I knew you were going to say
what
that.
we're trying to create.
But I mean, I guess who takes the lead? Do you sit down with Gillette or Kellogg or Procter & Gamble and do you say, we want to do this for you, but you really need to be thinking about it this way?
We do our own consumer research, number one, but they obviously are doing it as well. So as we are sitting down with the brand managers at, say, a Procter & Gamble or a Gillette or a Kellogg's, we're talking about what our read on the consumer perception is of their package. They likely have the same read that we have. And then we are helping them develop packaging that are more consumer friendly. A perfect example is our Nabisco crackers package. It's the Snack and Seal. And that was developed with Nabisco 5 years ago, and it came about, consumer research showed them and us that most consumers thought they had the freshest cookies in the world when they first opened the package, but when they went back the second time, they were stale. So we developed a revolutionary package that's all over the marketplace today that called Snack and Seal that the consumer says has changed the cookie aisle.
And we know that double stuffed cookie well. Thank you for that. I think about you all the time with our kids. Go ahead, John.
Well, again, as an expert in cookies, I certainly can attest to that. Tell us a little bit about this new company you're taking in. And for me as an economist, the interesting story is it's slightly different than what you've done in the past. So how do you integrate a different operation with a different orientation into a very successful firm?
You asked me 3 or 4 questions, John.
Yes, sir.
No, Paul.
That's what economists do.
I understand. Actually, we have been in the protective packaging business for about 25 years.
Okay.
And so protective packaging has been an interest of ours. And I think it's a market that is going to grow. I think as you see more internet sales, you're going to need more protection in the package as it gets to the home. And as we went through our strategic review several years ago, we targeted a couple of companies that were of interest to us. Tegrant was one. And so we went out to the owners and actually engaged them and obviously paid a full price, bought a very good company. The integration is 4 months into it. I've been extremely pleased with the quality of the people and the culture of Tegrant. Every company has a culture, and most of the time they're different. I would say that the Tegrant culture is much like the Sunoco culture of caring about people, caring about customers, innovation, and the integration is going quite well. I would be less than honest if I said there has not been a speed bump or two along the way. There always will be.
I'm familiar with those.
You are, but it's gone beyond my best expectations at this point. It takes us into the pharmaceutical business, which we have always wanted to talk about and getting into. They have temperature-assured packaging where if you're shipping pharmaceuticals around the world, it's a pretty good chance that it's in their temperature-assured packaging. And the other thing that we liked about Tegrant is when we looked at their customer base, we saw a significant opportunity to take other Sunoco products and services into their customer base that we were not supplying when we acquired them. Plus, we had the opportunity to take their products and services into our strong customer base. So we think it's a home run, and we're really counting on great things from them.
Thank you.
We have about a minute and a half left, Debra, so I want to get this one last question in here. You know, Sunoco's, at least in Darlington County and in other parts of South Carolina, has been known for the support in K-12 education. And how you feel about it, Harris, and how your senior leadership team feel about it is one thing, and even mid-level managers. But I guess how do you get the employees pulling all in the same direction, and how do they feel about this K-12 support?
Well, I think most of the time an organization is reflective of the leadership. And if the leadership is engaged and has a sound policy going forward, you can generally engage them. I would say that in South Carolina, what we're doing with the Pulse program in Darlington County, boy, it's 99, 100% involvement or buy-in from our folks. They're delighted to see education improvement and the efforts in educational improvement. They're interested in it for their own children, their grandchildren. But frankly, as we're trying to recruit quality people, one of the first things they look at is what kind of education are my children going to be able to get? And one of our challenges with this new program we instituted in Hartsville was the challenge, we'll be the bank. We committed $5 million to this project. But it's with a goal that we're going to be in the top quartile of test results in the state of South Carolina in 5 years, and the top quartile in the nation in 10 years, and we will make it.
And we're going to hold you on that. We're going to have you come back and report on that to us if you don't mind.
I look forward to it.
Thank you, Harris, for being on the program.
Thank you, Chris.
Debra, welcome.
Thank you.
John, always good to see you. Until next week, I'm Chris William. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation in Charlotte enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton, an international accounting, tax, and business advisory organization dedicated to serving middle-market companies. Grant Thornton, a passion for the business of accounting. Novant Health, including Presbyterian in Charlotte and Forsyth in Winston-Salem, are affiliate heart hospitals of the Cleveland Clinic, consistently ranked #1 in the nation for heart care. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, proudly serving South Carolinians since 1946. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.com.